is going to become a theme, Miranda. I'm grabbing your mic every time. So we're going to drop some wisdom nuggets. That's what we call them. So be on the lookout for wisdom nuggets. When something registers with you, write it down, and most importantly, implement it. But we're not serious all the time. If you've listened for a while, we get pretty weird. And I was just thinking as Wes is just dropping bombs and so elegantly, and then that prayer at the end, my ADD brain was going, and it reminded me of my favorite Christmas decoration I've ever seen. So you have this house, every square inch is covered, roof, walls, grass, lights galore, like insane. And then the dude next to him just bought a sign that has an arrow pointing and it said ditto. And that's what that prayer made me think, like, wow, good luck following that.
Yeah, this is part of the beauty of the podcast and what we've been doing over the last few years is having guests like Wes. I don't know that every once in a while, Kevin or I accidentally says something that's relatively or marginally interesting or funny, but for the most part, the beauty of what we're doing is just mining intelligent people, getting them to speak into things that I think lots of us talk about or think about or wrestle with or whatever, and having a great network of folks to say, hey, and you're a pro at this. Come tell me your story. Come talk me through this. And so having Wes to kind of be in the middle of this today on that topic is perfect because that's exactly what we do. Find someone who's awesome at it, and then ask what I would say our superpower is just asking curious questions. Tell me more about that. What does that mean? Why did you say that? What does this mean to you? How do you just asking questions and making it, or hoping at least, it feels like our listeners are brought into a conversation with a couple of dudes just drinking coffee and hanging out. And that's sort of, at least I hope, the vibe of what we've been doing. And that involves jokes and silliness sometimes too, and getting in the ditch. And you wake up, or you look up and you're like, we've been making quarter zip jokes for 15 minutes. Let's get back on topic here. So anyway, I hope that if you're listening, it feels like that in the car, just like hanging out with some buddies.
Yeah, and we have a ton of bits on the podcast, one of which being, guess how many quarter zips Stewie owns. And so I'm wearing one to recognize him, but speaking of recognizing, we didn't really introduce him. So he's happily married, 3 kiddos, great lawyer, great friend, and he's really the yin of my yang when it comes to personality traits, and Aranda and I were talking about that during break, and we didn't realize this until we took a personality test in a leadership group, sort of like this, and the instructor had us line up for each dot of the profile, and him and I, for every single dot, would high-five each other as we walked opposite ends of the spectrum. And so many things clicked, like why we work so well together, also the frustrations we would have with each other, because I'm this, like, gas pedal down, and he's the, wait, did you cross your T?
Have we thought about that? Kevin, have we thought about this? I don't know. Let's spend a month thinking about it before we do something. I was listening to one of my, other than the 17Twenty podcast, one of my favorite podcasts right now is this thing called Acquired. Write it down. It's very interesting. It's a podcast called Acquired. They usually do very long form reviews of companies, like how did Costco become Costco? They walk all the way through that. This week's was with Charlie Munger. For Matt Fisher's benefit, Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's right-hand man. Like, he's been on the Berkshire Hathaway journey with him forever. He's 99 years old. They caught him like at a dinner party. He sat down and talked with him, and they asked him, like, you've been business partners with him with Buffett for over 50 years, like how does that work? Like, what's the magic of it? You have no idea what I'm about to say to you.
Not at all.
This is why the podcast is great. What is the hallmarks of that partnership being great? And he said the 2 things. One, generally like hanging out with each other. I was like, yeah, that story checks out. And the other thing that Charlie Munger said about his relationship with Warren Buffett was, he's really good at things that I'm not good at, and I'm really good at things he's not good at. And I was like, man, isn't that it? Like, that's the yin to your yang. This is
What do you call it? What's the coin? You coined it, and it's going to be the name of your book that you write in the future.
I have no idea.
What?
No, I don't know.
Accidental Genius.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Accidental Genius. Yeah, my whole life story involves, like, me just kind of stumbling into cool things, including, but not limited to, the podcast. So, yeah.
So we're going to lean further into burnout and exhaustion. You know, whether you're through that season of life or you're right in the throes of it, or maybe it's about to come and you can't even see it coming, that's what we want to talk about. And personally for me, I've been through some testimony that includes drug addiction, rehab, a fork in the road with suicide, and a lot of things that my south side of Chicago kind of personality was like, stuff all that down, negative emotions. You're weak if you show any sign of weakness. You know, you're not a man, like all that sort of stuff. And those are all lies. And I am so much busier with my family now. I didn't have a family then. I have different career paths that are happening. And despite all of those things happening, I'm less burnt out and exhausted than I've ever been. So there's more on my plate, but I'm feeling less like that. And that's why I'm so passionate to come and talk about this, because I want that for you. And this segment, we did a little bit of it with Wes with the EKG acronym, but we want y'all looking in the mirror on what are some tactics, some tangible tactics that you could take away to start chipping away at this. Because if you're in it and it's at a ceiling or a maximum, it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna be a process, but you may look back if you put the consistent effort in and say, wow, we got through that, and now I'm gonna help others.
Yeah, one of the things Kevin does really well is giving practical, tangible, tactical advice. Saying, okay, and a couple of episodes ago, I forget what it was, we were talking about mindset, and the thing that I took away from that, part of this has just been like learning from one another, was like the things that jump out in your mind when you have a certain thought, right? Like, you're having, like, I should go do whatever, at what cost was the one that from a few episodes ago that stuck in my mind, like that, if that becomes like your trigger, and that's like a very practical, tactical thing, not just ethereal, like, hey, go evaluate everything. Like, that's great, you should do that, absolutely, 100%, but take another step into the weeds a little bit, and I think that's where we live for the next few minutes is, how? So hopefully you take some notes, grab some, as we would say, grab some wisdom nuggets so that when you leave, it's not just like, well, that was a good talk, but I don't know what I got from it. When you leave, you think, okay, that was a great talk, I took some great notes, and tomorrow, or this afternoon, or this evening when I get home, I can do X to begin taking those steps towards, changing something. So one to me jumps out right off the top, unless you got a list you want to go through.
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. And ironically, protecting or guarding your yes or guarding your no is something to me that is just, it was, in my particular season, it was killing me. Part of your, the spirit of your youthfulness is, I could have said yes to a lot of things. And I did. I said yes to a lot of things. I did a lot of things. I was everywhere. I was doing everything. And then I now have, well, we're in birthday season, so in 30 days, I'll have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old, and we're busy. And that, I was saying yes to everything, and then they started needing me more. And so it was just the convergent of busyness. And I think Wes talked a little bit about it. Like, you can get busy. You want to be busy? You can get busy. But just protecting and guarding your no around that so that you can really focus on the things that are most important. And as a man who I just turned 45, like, there are a lot of things that start to converge at that time of your life that Ashley and I have been married about 20 years. My parents are aging. I don't look like I'm 16 anymore. My health and behavioral and exercise habits are different. Like, it's a convergence of all these things that if I'm not really intentional about guarding my no and saying like that, I would love to help do that, but I can't. I'm just saying no. It's been very helpful for me in the process. And part of the saying no is derivative of the evaluate everything process. Like, there was a spreadsheet and I ranked everything and I got to the bottom and I was like, you know what? I'm doing that thing, but it's not a top 5 priority for me. And it's gonna suck because I'm a people pleaser, man. Like, Kevin and I have talked about this before. I'm a people pleaser. I want nothing more than for you guys to think, that guy's awesome and he's got it all together. Like, that's like the siren song of my soul. And it's really hard for me to say, Kevin, I know you need me to help move that date. What was it that you needed help moving?
Yeah, it happens so often.
No, we were just talking about it. The bed, the bunk bed.
Help. Yeah.
He didn't
help
actually ask for help. He never asked for help.
No.
But I know you need help doing that, but like, it's not in my top 5 and I can't do it. That kills me because I want you to think I'm awesome, right? But I have to like get in a spot where I'm saying yes to my family, my kids, my health, all of that, to avoid just running myself ragged being busy. So on the list, that one is just at the top for me. Guard your no, man.
Yeah, and let's go into that further. Protecting your yes, so if you're not a business owner, you might not be able to do that at work. Well, how do I say no? And and you still can. And it's about the spreadsheets that Stewie's talking about. It's about staying organized and prioritization. Because I could tell you right now as a leader, if I came and asked Stewart, and Stewart direct reported to me, hey, I need you to do this. If he countered with, well, check this out, here are my priorities, I could get that done by Thursday, but this slides. And then I say, no way, that's a higher priority. I want you to stay on that, and let's get to that afterwards. And I like to refer to that as like this upward, downward arrow of communication goes up and assumption goes down. And so if we're communicating these things, we could better protect our yeses at work. And then when it comes to overall life, do your yeses and nos align with something? Like being a people pleaser, it breaks my heart if Stewie says, hey, let's go to this happy hour, so-and-so is gonna be there, and I say no without a purpose tied to it. Well, my purpose to guarding my evenings is my beautiful wife and princess daughter, like the period. I wanna go see them. Yeah, it'd be awesome to see my friends and chop it up and have fun, but if that's a B, my family's an A. And understanding, like, here are he talked about ranking it, whether you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or A, B, C, D, your 1 or your A is a non-negotiable. What are your non-negotiables? And if something interferes with that non-negotiable, your no becomes a little bit easier to say. And I don't know if you think about this too, but it does get easier with time, especially if you're a people pleaser.
Oh yeah, the industry that we're in has lots of evening things, right? Like you can always find a happy hour or something to do or something to go to or a game to go to or whatever. And when we had William, that very quickly became my no. Like, y'all want to go to dinner? Cool, not going. Because I was not going to be the dad who wasn't tucking him in at night, right? And that doesn't sound like it was never as wonderful as I'd imagined, because it was a disaster and there were toys on the floor and, it was a mess. But all that, but I wasn't going to not be there for that. And so hey, I can't make it home because I'm going to dinner with so-and-so or whatever, ended abruptly. But I replaced it with, catch you for breakfast. You want to grab coffee? How about lunch? And so the no was derivative, to your point, my no in those instances was derivative of a purpose. I'm going to be home. And with an understanding that the meeting that we needed to have was important, let's just figure out a way to fit it into the space and the time that I've allocated for it. I'm not going to let that interfere with the space and time that I've created for something else.
And there always are exceptions to the rule, but that's how you have to see it. There's exceptions. And now I need to put that same arrow to work at home, communication up, assumption down with my wife. 3 weeks from now, there's this event. I have to be there. I have to be there. Can we reorganize some things? Can you pick our daughter up from school? Now she's in the know, because I used to fail at that all the time. And we were trying to merge technology and calendars together. And what we ended up doing is just a marker board calendar in our kitchen. And it's my responsibility when there's a non-negotiable event that's going to take my time away from the family, that it goes up there. And if I didn't do that, it's on me. And once we implemented that as a family, even the ones, because there are exceptions to that rule, at least we're proactively planning and we're increasing our communication that doesn't cause heartache within our families.
Okay, so another one on your list that's huge to me is find what your rest is. And I'm an attorney, and during this season of just burning myself out, I'm a trial attorney, so we're going to prep these cases. We're going to go down to the courthouse or private arbitration or wherever. We're going to go try these cases. There's a lot of work that goes into that, while simultaneously managing a practice with a bunch of people and a corporate organization that was coming from the directives from. There was a lot of stuff going on, and all day long it was just me sitting at a desk working with my mind. Right? I never left the office. This is one of the frustrating things about being a lawyer. I never left the office, and I was like, I built that. I did that. Look at this thing I accomplished. It was like, no, I did this. Like this.
TPS report.
TPS report. This is what I did. And then that's not to diminish the import of it. It's just like, there was no physical, tangible manifestation of the work that I was doing. And at about the same time, we had an opportunity to purchase a piece of property out in the middle of nowhere that had nothing on it. And so what I loved doing on the weekends was going out there and just mowing. I just want to go mow and weed eat and trim a tree and just be exhausted, just miserably exhausted. That's what I wanted to do on the weekend. And my wife didn't really understand. She's like, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. That's not her voice. That's the voice I just gave her, though. And she's like, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I was like, no, this is amazing, right? And it was in those moments where I was like, well, that's not her rest, right? Like her rest looks completely different than my rest. But that was because of the season and because of the work that I was doing during the day, that was my rest. And I would go out there for 2 days and come home like dehydrated and exhausted and sunburned and be like, man, that was awesome. She's like, you're crazy. But the point of that being like, you have to know what it is that's recharging you and know what it is that's you're deriving energy that's not sucking energy from you. And so that's the way we sort of phrase it is, you need to define your rest.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate on that because even with Stewart, I love going to the gym. And I didn't fully understand all the benefits and reasons why I like going early in the morning to start my day. But that's actually one of my rest items. Because when I work with my mind so much, I rest with my hands. And so when I'm pumping iron or doing cardio, like my brain's able to space out for a little bit, just like mowing the lawn or working on the property. And I had such a struggle of like, you asking like, why do you do that 6 days a week? And it's like, it's because I love it. It brings me joy. It charges my battery. To somebody else, they're like, are you out of your mind? Like, that's not what charges my battery. Laying in a coma is what charges my battery. I just want to melt out. And even with me, I'm the supercharger. My body, I forget, I think I call them shutdown days. There's like one every other month where when I wake up, my body says, not today. You were on that couch today. And it's coined in our house as a shutdown day. So even me, I have one where I'm just like a vegetable for a day and that's it.
Well, but knowing it, right? Like knowing it, communicating up and down. Like if Sadie didn't know that that's where you were living or that was like the recharge day or whatever the case may be. I mean, communication is high on this issue because otherwise she's like, bruh, why are you being such a lazy sluggard today? Like, no, we have an understanding that this is rest for me right now, and you have a different form of rest, and sometimes we can rest together, and sometimes we work differently, whatever. But just understanding the rhythms and patterns of each other, I think, is very, very important because it's very easy for, and I'll be Sadie in this instance, to be like, this is not what I had in mind. Like breeding resentment or frustration, and then you put that back into your EKG, like as you're assessing all things, like is this healthy or not, and how are you solving that? How are you growing what's good there? I think communication is sort of the ultimate superpower around all that. It's just having great communication with those people who are in your orbit so that they know, like, he's actually not being lazy. That's rest today, and I can see it as what it is and appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, so define those. Define what charges your battery. Reflect on it. Write them down. And you might not solve them today, but that's the goal. Like, this is just a launching pad for some of those things. And the next one is near and dear to me, and I love that Wes brought up the kind of starter to all of it for me, which is finding your routine. And so these guys know that I have a routine for every day of the week. Monday through Friday has a routine. Saturday has its own. Sunday has its own. And it allows me to automate a lot of my day so I can force multiply my capacity. And the very start of it was exactly Wes's story, was step one of finding my true routine, moving that phone into the kitchen and buying an alarm clock. It was a huge one because every 30 minutes I was looking at this phone like I was so important. And like he said, maybe once the entire time, the years that I've had it at my bedstand, I actually needed that message. And the freedom when you move that out and you just have the now your next wrestle is, are you going to hit the biggest button on the alarm clock? They make it so convenient. And so with finding your routine, the beginning of your day is everything. And why I go on such a tangent with that alarm clock is that snooze button, that's your first negotiation. And so are you negotiating with that thing? If you hit it 3 times, like, is it causing you to fall further into hurry mode when you already have a busy schedule? Because there's a big difference between being busy and being hurried. And if you hurry your way through each day, that's going to lead you to burnout and exhaustion. And so I like to say, like, first 10. What are the first 10 things you're going to do in your day? And that's a routine. But that's not the only phases of the day that we need to pay attention to. So the very start of your day is one. And then the very start of your work day, it doesn't have to be a 10, but just like what's one thing that you could do that's a trigger to make you more efficient? What's one after lunch? So you crush the morning, and then you crush some fajitas, and then you go back to your computer or job site or whatever, and you're like, eyes crossed, you can't really see. for me, that's turning on my Spotify worship music. And that habit, when I do it, it's like my hands get drawn in and start typing on the keyboard. And then before I leave work, there's a trigger. What is the one thing? Before I walk in the house for the day, there's a one thing in that routine. And then the end of the day, I set some steps, kind of like a last 10, to make sure the next day goes more fluently.
Yeah, all of those things, like I couldn't say yes more to them. I was speaking with somebody out at the buffet table earlier, and I think what I said was, it's easy to say, it's really hard to do. Like it's like, oh, a couple guys with a microphone were telling me to like set a top 10 thing. It's easy for me to say that to you. This afternoon when you're thinking about Monday, or Monday when you're thinking about Sunday when you're thinking about Monday, I don't need to do that. Like that's the thought process here. Like, I don't need to do it. It's fine. Status quo is okay. I've been doing it like this for 20 years, no big deal. And that's the hard part, right? Like it's the mental mountain, if you will, to overcome. Like that's the hard part. It's easy for me to say it. It's going to be harder for you to do it. And so I guess my challenge for you guys would just be like, think about it. And on Sunday when you have, what do they call it? The Sunday scaries. Somebody say, the Sunday scaries where you're just like, oh my God, I'll work tomorrow. Stop and just make a top 5 for tomorrow morning and get your Monday kicked off. There's a period. I have a tendency to create run-on sentences. Period.
Hard stop.
Hard stop. Who's seen that video from Admiral McCraven? I think he was delivering a commencement address to the University of Texas where he talks about make your bed every day. Yeah. I mean, this is not that you need additional words on the same topic, but if you haven't seen that video, go watch it. I mean, I think that probably gets you close enough. Admiral McCraven he's an admiral, and he does a talk, generally speaking. Yeah, how I love for an intro. He does a talk generally about how making your bed is the first hard decision. It gets your day launched into being productive. You've done something from the jump of your morning. You've done something productive, and then it makes all the other decisions a little easier. Same thing we're talking about. Same exact thing we're talking about. Different opportunity to utilize it from a tactics perspective, but if you think, oh, I want to hear more words about that, go YouTube that on the way home, or actually not on the way home. Don't watch YouTube in the car, but later, right? Like check that out. So that's another resource to look at.
Yeah, and you got to, just like all of these points, you got to find what works for you. Because if I made my bed to start my day at 4 a.m., my wife would divorce me. So there is a different routine for me that I have to go find.
Also, I don't understand, we've never talked about this, how the doesn't get you divorced at 4:30 also.
Because it only happens once.
Fair. This is an idea I just had, and you can't take it because it's mine right now, but I'm going to develop an alarm clock with no snooze button on it, and then I'm just going to sell them to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll buyer of one.
Buyer of one.
So, ditch. This is what we call going into the ditch. Wes was talking about classical music. I think mine plays like Beethoven, so it's not as alarming.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry.
I actually, like, deep inside love that joke, but I had to, like, feign disgust for the bit, but, like, that's...
I heard groans, which makes me win as a dad. That's
beautiful.
That's what I'm after.
That's beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to keep this going. I see the clock ticking over there. One of the things Kevin preaches that I need to be preached to me is, like, pre-decision making. It kind of goes along with routine, and I'll let you speak more to it a little bit, but I want to set it up because it's super important to me, is, like, I'm going to decide right now that on Monday morning, I'm going to do X. And so that when Monday morning gets here, you don't think, I don't know, should I? You can be reminded, no, I've already made this decision. Kevin calls it pre-decision making. I don't know if that's unique or you came up with it, but we'll give it to you here, full and free credit. But think about those things in your life that you're negotiating with yourself about that are just causing extra stress. We had an episode, it was back in the 2 digits, I forget exactly the number, but it was with a guy named Barry Brooks, who was at the time a law partner of mine. Home dude ran 17 Ironman, something like this. He had all the medals hanging on the wall in his office. And Barry's listening right now. He's like, oh gosh, I hate you. But we're really good friends. The thing that Barry said, it's to this point, is there was a point on his drive home where he had to go onto this like overpass ramp and decide if he was going to go left and go home to Rockwall or make a right and go to I think it's called a natatorium, where you swim inside. Isn't that like an inside swimming gym? It's called a natatorium. And that was the moment. Shrugging that off? Mad, is that what it's called? Yeah. The decision mattered right then. right? Like, he could have thought about it all day long or wish-washed about it all day long, but really, it only mattered right there. You're going to put your left blinker on and go home, or you're going to put your right blinker on and go swim. And he said he just thought about it all day. He's like, I'm not making the decision when I'm tired, when I've had a long day, when I'm super frustrated by work, when I know I just like would rather get home because the Rangers are playing. I'm making the decision right now that when I hit that intersection, I'm putting the right-hand blinker on and I'm going to the gym. I'm not going to try to make that decision in that moment. And so this is, I've said it a couple different ways, but it's Kevin's idea. Making those pre-decisions, it really does change everything. I'll let you say more about that.
Well, where I've been really doing some deep work in my life and don't have it by any stretch figured out. I am a broken person, and I continue to find out how many layers of this brokenness I have. So let's get that fact straight. But we work so much on leading others and routines and setting goals, but then we let this thing between our ears run wild. So like pre-decisions of mindset. And what pre-decisions do you have to make? Because what was happening to me was the sleepless nights and being medicated in order to sleep. And if I was trying to make that decision to shut my mind down at the very end of the day, there's no chance. I need to build that habit during sunlight. And so started working these pre-decisions of mindset, and I kind of coin it, are you watching the movie of your life or writing the script? And so forever I was watching the movie. I'd wake up, and all of a sudden all these thoughts would enter my head, some good, some terrifying, and like whatever, the shower for me was like a black portal of darkness. Like I'd go in there, probably because it's quiet, and then something from 10 years ago that scares me to death, like something that I did would pop in and I'd have to like shake it off. And I'm like, why am I continuing to do this to myself? And when we allow ourselves to do that, it only manifests stronger. So if you're saying, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, guess what? Like, it's almost you're allowing yourself to be there and for it to grow. And so the first pre-decision of mindset that I was trying to wrestle with was being where my feet are. So I could do that as I'm talking to y'all and in my meetings, but in my quiet time, I would bounce around everywhere. And when I caught myself bouncing around, I tagged a statement to that weakness. So if my weakness was being present, my statement was, what is your next thought? And that was from a book, just got one nugget from that book, and that just cleared the space in my head. And just for a millisecond, I didn't think about something. And I have to do that hundreds of times. But what I ended up finding out to the onion layers is the next thing I peeled back was, okay, being present, I figured that out, and I have a tagline to there, why am I so angry? Why do I beat the steering wheel and go nuts in traffic and go 20 miles per hour over the speed limit when I'm a half hour early? Like, what is the deal there? And found out that it's tied to fantasy land. Like, I get wrapped up in these thoughts of like, oh, that HOA guy that wrote about our subdivision, I sure would like to punch him. And I start thinking about all that. And where is that getting me? And so the statement to that is, quit watching the movie. And now when I catch myself getting angry, it ties me there. And then that peels back the next onion layer. Why do I need to make that story up in my head? Because I'm a control freak. I can't control that HOA guy typing on our Facebook page, calling everybody's house out, but I might be able to control kicking his door down. Like, that's not for me to control, and I think Wes said it really well with, we're not God. We don't have to have control over all these things. He does, and we're not that big of a deal.
I just want to know so much what the guy wrote on the page, but I don't know if I'd...
Oh, it's everything. Like that truck's leaking oil, how dare you? Get that hunk of junk out there and out of our subdivision. And the guy that owns the truck is like, I'm so sorry, I can't afford to change my oil. And I'm like, yeah, it gets me.
So when we get done, we're going to rally together. We're going to get that guy. Is that what the takeaway is here?
Yeah, he has a name at our house that I won't say because I don't swear anymore.
Yeah. So we have, I think, what's our stop time? That clock stopped ticking down. Do we need to stop here and take some Q&A? Yeah, let's do that. We got a couple of other things, but let's just pause for a minute and see if anybody has like a question or say, hey, I'm Russell on this, or what about this, or if you got So anything? I mean, it's okay to not have a question also, but I would hate for us to not offer you all that opportunity.
Matt Fisher.
So how many pullovers do you have in your closet?
Well, are you asking about pullovers or quarter zips?
Quarter
Because those
zips.
are two
Quarter
different
zips.
articles of clothing. No, the number what was it, 39?
No, it was like 42-ish.
42-ish, yeah.
Yeah.
When we did like an online contest to guess how many there were, it was, I guess, 42 at the time. I've cleaned some out since then, so the number's probably in the mid-30s, but
Right. And then, question for Kevin. You said you turned into a vegetable every other month. What vegetable do you turn into?
Let's go with carrot.
Carrot. All right, then the serious question. So when you're talking about burnout, we talk a lot about work and burnout at work, and then we come home, and that's our recovery. But too often today, we burn out at home. We're so busy at home doing different things. How do you work through burnout at home when you're burning out at work and at home, and don't have that recovery period?
man, there's a guy in my small group with me and Wes, and there's 4 of us, but the guy's name's Josh. And when we first started, like, our community group, like, children started showing up. He wrestled with that first. He has the oldest kid. And he was like, I'm showing up at home, and I'm giving Melissa, like, not my best. And I don't know, I'm bringing it home. I don't know if this is exactly to your point, but I think I'm going to get there eventually. I'm not giving Melissa my best, and I don't know what to do about it. So we talked about it, and eventually, the idea that we eventually, like, came to was you need to have a trigger to snap yourself out of it. Like, you got to bring your best home. Like, whatever happened to work, that sucked. I get it. Your family deserves your best. And so to him, this is crazy, the smell of the diapers sitting in the garage, like that y'all all just smelled it. I know you did. Like, it's stuck in there. Like, that smell was his reminder that what's on the other side of that door deserves my best. And that we, like, talked through an actual smell trigger to, like, snap him out of that I'm burned out at work sort of pity party, right? But it looks different for everybody. How you snap yourself out of it is different. What your relationship is with your family and your kids and your wife, and that all looks different. But I really just want to emphasize that, like, no matter what else is going on at work, or your fantasy football team is terrible, man, I get it. But when you smell those diapers on the way through the door, the people inside that house deserve your best. So figure out how to hold something in the tank. You have to have reserve so when you get home, they get your best. And I will say 1,000,000 times over, I'm not the best at doing it, right? Like, I have a really short commute. I'm very lucky to have a short commute. Sometimes I hit the door, I'm still on the phone. And the time trigger has to be immediate. So sometimes I'll take an extra lap. I'll sit out front before I hang up and, like, try to take a breath. I'm not saying, please don't mistake anything we're saying up here to be like, we're great, like, we're really crushing it. You should definitely, like, heed that we're so good at. No, we're wrestling through it too, right? We're wrestling through it too, and I don't do a great job of it, but I think I got at least kind of close. You might have some other thoughts on that.
To each their own. It builds on that a little bit. In the find your routine earlier, I have to literally shake off my days in the driveway. There has to be a clear separation, because what I found out in my discovery was it wasn't that I left it all on the line and I don't have gas left in the tank. It was a lie. I was letting myself manifest a lie and a lazy excuse to not give the people that love me the most the best attention. And so once I stopped lying to myself and walking in the door and saying, no, at my deathbed, they're the ones that are going to be there, not the employers. They deserve my best, and they're going to get it. And to his point, I still fail at it, but at least there's a mechanism now to catch that lie, because in my head, it was just a lazy cop-out. I could just say that to y'all, and it makes me feel better, a little hit of dopamine. All right, there's my excuse. No, not anymore. It's an excuse.
Yeah, there's, I don't know how many of y'all know Jesse Itzler, but Jesse Itzler has a saying, and I think it's mostly intended to revolve around, like, your body's ability to exert physically. And he says, once you run out of energy, you've only expended about 20% of it. Is it that, or is it the reverse? Either way,
That's it.
It's it. Once you feel like you ran out of energy, you still have 80% of the tank. That's your mind lying to you. One of the things I would tell the boys, so my oldest, William, who's about to turn 16, he's a prolific cross-country runner. I didn't know it at the time, but when he was in kindergarten, we would go running. And now I realize it was weird because he was a really good runner, and I just thought it was normal because he's my oldest. But I would tell him, like, your mind is weak. your body is strong, your mind is weak. And he learned to like just say, that's right. Like when I start feeling tired, I've only spent about 20% of my energy. And I think that translates to your mental energy too. Now, I don't have like some scientific evidence of this or whatever, but when you hit the door and you're like, oh man, I'm out of steam. No, you're not. Like you have 80% left. You're just choosing not to give it. And so what, like physically shake it off, make a lap around the house, have a routine to snap out of it, something to realize, no, you're not actually out of energy. You're making an excuse, and the people who are inside those doors deserve the best.
Yes, ma'am.
Not really a question necessarily, but kind of, I thought a little bit more about your question about how do you give to when you're drained from your work and your home. But what I've gathered from this as well is sometimes relying on your community. So this group that we're in right now is a community because it's something that we're all struggling with. The gentlemen up here have talked about how their, church groups and friends and community have helped them self-realize as well. So maybe that could be another avenue to look into as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to that for just a second. And Kevin wrote a book. It's called The Mountain Mover Manual. If you don't have a copy of it, you should get one. It's on Amazon. It's on Audible. What?
Plug. Thank you.
He didn't ask me to plug anything. There it is right there. We did a cool Audible version of it. But one of the things in the book that he talks about is find your tribe. And you talked about 2 tribes right there of folks who can speak into it. But one of the things, and I meant to say it when Wes was up here and we were talking, was I wouldn't have wrestled through that phase were it not for him saying, I think you're in a phase, right? And Kevin has been a part of that. Matt, some of the guys back here at this table, Gerald has been hey man, I know you. Like I know you. And that's not okay. Or that's not normal. And having a community of people who can speak into your life, because guess what? You're probably blind to some of this, or you're making an excuse for it. This guy right here will be the number one guy. I heard that's an excuse, cut it out. I'm like,
And to just relay
You're right.
that's Matt in my life.
yeah. I mean, Matt too. Like I'm having, is it lunch or breakfast next week? Because I want that feedback. I reached out to Matt. You don't know this yet, but I was like, we're going to have lunch next week, and I want the feedback. I want somebody to say, I know you. I've known you for a long time. I know the way your mind works and your heart works, and I know what's important to you. That's not okay. You need to fix that. And that feels like, at first, when I say that, somebody's like, ugh. Yeah, ugh, right? But I know when those guys say that, it's not because they're trying to, lord over me or be better than me or dominate. They're doing it because they love me and they care about me, and they want what's best for me and my family. So if you haven't found your tribe, to your point, get busy. Get busy finding it. It's here at a church, a community of faith. It's in your peer groups. It's in your networks. It's out there somewhere. Go find it, because it is instrumental to helping you level up wherever you're going.
Hi, thank you. I hope I can get this question out right, but it's about the routine and the plans and kind of thinking ahead and planning out. I love all of that. That speaks to my soul and who I am. But how do you then deal with the changes that pop up that are unpredictable? So, you have your first 10, you have thought out Monday morning, you kind of have in your mind that the day that it's, going to happen and all of those things, and I struggle with control and letting go as well. So sometimes those changes that pop up that just completely affect your entire day really are a huge wrench for me, and being able to continue to shake it off and have the joy and the energy. It just kind of sucks it all out of the day. So how do you deal with that, or what do you have to share maybe to help with that?
Have you tried throwing things? I find breaking something usually solves that.
No, but maybe
no.
I do need to do that.
No, that's not actually advice. That's disregard that. Hit delete back there. Just cut that out. Now go ahead. I got a couple ideas. Go ahead.
I love that question because it's a real situation that happens. And I call them to-do list days, where I have my prioritized list out, and then I'm in construction. The world just goes crazy. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, I did nothing on this list. But I'll give you a little story that happened where in a prioritized week, I'm knocking out my priorities and I'm not letting things procrastinate into the next day when I do have the time because I don't know what's coming. And so on this sample week, Monday through Thursday, I haven't had the big fire pop up. And then that Friday morning, my daughter's school called and said, your daughter has a 102 fever, she's got to leave right now. I still had all of my Friday things to do, but guess what? That became my new A in my priority list, non-negotiable. Everything else is going to the side. So on my way to that school, I called the people that I was going to meet, which they're all under, if they have kids, they especially get it. And now I'm adjusting to it. If I hadn't executed when the fires weren't there, Monday through Thursday, now Monday through Thursday's things that I've slipped on is also on top of that Friday. Now I'm in deep. And so that's why you do it so routinely that when the fires do pop up, the adjustment's not so radical because you could go right back to it once you put that fire out.
Yeah, I agree with that, having a priority system, right? Another thing that, Kevin is, I will say, teaching me is like having an immediate mental response to it. So I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but what I was thinking when you said that is like, what's the big deal? Like something popped up. What's the big deal? Trust me, I get it. Like the big deal is I want to break stuff too. Like I'm not diminishing that feeling, but what's the big deal? Okay, something popped up. Put it in order, get to it when you get to it. The other thing is, and I really keep going into infinity, struggle with having margin. Like if I flip my calendar up here, you'd be like, oh my gosh, you are crazy. You're triple booked all day. I'm just like, I don't know. Like I need to not be busy, right? But I remember I'm a people pleaser. If you need me at a meeting, I'll be at a meeting. Like I'm triple booked all the time. And my focus is finding margin. Like I need spaces in my calendar where there aren't things. So that when the phone rings or something fell or whatever, it's like, I got an hour at 2 o'clock to take care of that. It's no big deal. It's no big deal because I have margin. And I think that margin needs to exist across all those things you're performing your EKG on, right? Because we're talking about it in the work context. Like, I had a to-do list and now there's something interfering with it. Well, you have that same lack of margin at home too. Like, oh man, we really need to talk about insert big thing at home here, right? But we're just so busy. Like, I got to get William to this, and I got to get Hayes there, and Stella's got to be here, and then I got to get the carpool, and we have no margin. And so the important things slip, right? And so anyway, this idea of creating that and holding fast to it, and some people in the get things done scene would say, making appointments with yourself. You create margin like that too. Like, no, from 2 to 3 every day, that's my time. Like, you don't get to book a meeting there. I'm already meeting with somebody who's really important. It's me, right? Well, that's how you bake margin in. Just create it. So anyway, again, raising my hand saying, yeah, I have that huge problem too. And those are some ideas of how I'm struggling to wrap my head around it and work through it. But perhaps one of those tactics is helpful for you too. Yeah.
And we're 155 episodes in, but we've never had a timer.
Yeah.
And so I know she's probably panicking that we're way behind schedule here, so you could take over if you'd like.
Yeah, somebody come rip these mics out of our hands. Any other? I have a couple parting shots. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to take them though. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm kind of curious. There's a personality test called True Colors, and you have the orange personality, which do not like structure. They're very spontaneous. And what kind of advice would you give this personality that doesn't like the routines, that don't like, structure, and that's more of your blue personality?
That's a great question. Could you hear?
No, could you say it out loud for this old man?
Well, I couldn't hear you really well, so I'm going to say it back just to make sure I heard it. But the gist of the question is when you in these personality surveys, some people have a more free-spirited, spontaneity-based, I just don't work well with rules. That's my words, not yours. But what we're talking about is man, you need rules, you need structure, you need discipline. How do you take those two ideas and sort of jive them together? That's a great question, right? It goes to everybody's a little bit different. And some of the things that we're saying are well, that's great. That shoe would fit well if I had an 11.5, but I don't, so the shoe doesn't fit, right? I don't know that I have a good answer for that. I am a rules-based, I'm a lawyer, right? Everything has a rule, there's a reason everything happens, and we do it in an order, and that's just my personality. So I hear the question, and I understand the consternation, and I don't know that I'm equipped to have a very good answer. I don't know. Maybe you have a better one.
I got one.
Yes.
Rip off Jocko Willing. Discipline equals freedom. So like,
There you go.
your
That's
freedom
good.
is that spontaneity. You need to create it through discipline. So like, him and I are polar opposites. I'm the gas pedal, chase squirrel, all that sort of stuff. My deep work that I have to prioritize that I hate doing is the stuff he loves. Like a boilerplate contract, reading a legal agreement. Ugh, I don't know how he does that for a living, but I gotta make it a priority, and they call it eating the frog to start the day. Like, I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna do it, so then I could go do the things I love. Because if we don't, and we keep stacking those things up, it's gonna rob us from being who we wanna be. So we have more incentive with our personality profile to do our deep work. His and I deep work is different. He has to put more effort into maybe the shallow things that are my deep things and vice versa. But same rule applies, discipline equals freedom.
Any other questions? You got a parting shot, Kev?
No, this has been awesome. Somebody's got to rob these microphones.
I
Thank
know.
you so much for letting us come here.